One of the biggest questions is Ohio State disappointing this year? I don't think they are, and there seems to be this belief, and maybe it is just preparing yourself for loss. I have no idea. But Ohio State fan seems resigned to a loss at Happy Ending Valley on Saturday, which I am not convinced of. I think this Ohio State defense is elite. It's one of the top 3 defenses in the country. I think the talent they have on that roster, I think the way they are coached, the way that they play the game, the chip on their shoulder defensively is remarkable. Have they had issues on offense? Yes, they have. And it is all, in my opinion, based on the offensive line not living up to standards. And I think if you look at the struggles that Ohio State has had running the ball consistently, I think that is the single largest issue going on in Columbus, is that they have not found a way with 2 really good running backs. The Ohio State has not found a way to consistently run the ball, because I'm going to make the argument, and I'll die on this hill. Will Howard, I think, has been better at Ohio State than he has been at any other time in his college football career. I think he's one of the top rated passers in the Big Ten for a reason. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Obviously, we're going to all point to the Oregon game and the run down the middle of the field as the clock expired. But by the by, the issue for Ohio State has been their inability to run the ball. But Jake, is it too strong to say that Ohio State football has been a disappointment this year?
No, I don't think it's too strong to say that. I think they haven't lived up to the expectation. I think that losing to Oregon like that was disappointing. And I think that this Penn State game is your entire season. It is the beginning and the end for multiple reasons. And yeah, I do think the offensive line is one of the major problems when you look at Will Howard's stats and what he's been able to do and what he hasn't done. A lot of that is because he doesn't have a lot of time. You look at the running game. The running game for Ohio State is not what it typically is. And you've got huge talent back there. So for me, I do think Ohio State's been, somewhat disappointing when you think about their expectations, but the reality is it's all still in front of them. You think about the path to winning a national championship and the path to the college football playoff. This is one of those games for Penn State where you have to have this, or for Ohio State, you have to have this against Penn State. You have to be able to beat Penn State, secure your place in the Big Ten, secure your spot in the college football playoff. And then obviously you'll go from there. But if on Monday after the weekend, we got to talk about how the O-line didn't perform, you weren't able to run the football, Will Howard was under pressure all day. Like, that's obviously not gonna lead Ohio State to where they want to go. And I just sit here and I say year after year, like, Ryan Day is a great head coach. And I think for all the people who want to die on the fire Ryan Day hill, I think you don't appreciate who Ryan Day is. You don't appreciate where your program is at under him. I understand being upset with the lack of national championships. I understand, being upset with, hey, we haven't been able to beat the best of the best. But the reality of the situation at Ohio State right now is you're making more money in your football program than anybody else in college football and college athletics. And you are in the college football playoff conversation seemingly every single year under Ryan Day. And every single year, Ryan Day has the opportunity to right the ship. And I think that situation for Ohio State is what so many fans struggle with. Hey, we're there every year. We just seemingly can't get over the hump. So I think, is Ohio State a disappointment, or have they been disappointing? Yeah, I think they've been a little bit disappointing this year. With that said, though, I think if you beat Penn State, I think if you go to the college football playoff, you can put all of that to bed, and you can still have a great season coming out of the Big Ten. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think everything that Ohio State has wanted, everything that Ohio State has worked for is right here in front of you. When you go to that crap hole in Pennsylvania this weekend, and you visit the most morally bankrupt, lacking in ethics or any kind of character university at all this weekend, and you go and you win that game, I think it is a stamp of approval on a long list of things that you have to accomplish. It is, to me, not the beginning, but it very well could be the end. If they lose that game, I think their chances of making the college football playoff for Ohio State are 43%. If they win that game, it goes up to 91%. If you look at the sentiment of who's in and who's out, I mean, it is no longer a sure thing that Ohio State's going to the college football playoff. And it is shocking that Indiana has the same, level of confidence that Ohio State has. That is shocking to me, that you put those, those wreckers of childhood ahead of Ohio State. I'm running out of things to say about that terrible university, but that you have Penn State elevated as a lock for the college football playoff. Beyond disgusting. It is shocking that Ohio State's not there. It is shocking that, and I don't necessarily agree with this. I think it is a lock that Texas, I think it is a lock that Boise State is going. I think it is a lock that Georgia's going. I would be really surprised, really, really surprised if any of those teams didn't get into the college football playoff. Would it be shocking if Miami somehow found a way to not go? Yeah, it would. It would. Because their schedule says they should go. Oregon's schedule says they should go. If you are a fan of childhood and innocence and, living a virtuous lifestyle, you should probably be rooting for Ohio State this weekend.
Right. Yeah. I think that, this graphic clearly is pointing out the fact that, you have no loss and one loss teams, right? That's what we're talking about here. And that's what the graphic is built on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You look at everybody under the Penn State, Oregon, Miami line, and all those folks have lost. And I think that, the hard part is that I feel like when we ask this question of is Ohio State disappointing this year, part of that question needs to be around your reputation. Because I think for Ohio State, that's the issue, is that when you look at graphics like this or other ones that are, predicting the playoff, like you look at those other teams and you're like, yeah, Georgia's getting in. Most years Bama's getting in. Like LSU is a fringe playoff team that, sometimes gets in and sometimes doesn't. Like I can look at a team and I can say, hey, this is your reputation. What does your record and strength of schedule say?
Yeah.
And that's what I think we're being forced to do with Ohio State this year. But I think if they beat Penn State and they do that on the road and they can do it I would love to see them beat Penn State by like 10 points. If you can do that, that basically fixes all of this. That proves to everybody, hey, you guys put Penn State up here on this pedestal and we just took them down. And, our only other loss is in a really tight game against Oregon at their place. So you can't have it both ways if you're someone who doubts Ohio State. You can't say that hey, this is not a good team, but then not give them credit for the fact that they're playing all these big ass road games and it's a more difficult situation. And I think that's why you need to win this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really difficult to go there and win. I think Penn State has a lot of momentum right now. I don't think it matters who they start at quarterback. Obviously, Drew Aller's dealing with a knee injury. I think that it's going to be rough. But if you look at what is in favor of Ohio State, going to the Fighting Paternos in Happy Ending Valley, and I'm not going to give up on it ever. They're only giving up 250 yards a game. They are a dominant team against the run. You look at just about every statistical category, they lead the Big Ten in defense. And whether it is 163 yards passing a game, whether it is, the fact that they only give up 91 yards a game, they're very good. They are very good. And across the board, I think they are the best defense. And I think they have that going for them. Now, offensively, there are some questions to be asked. They're still putting up 471 yards a game, which is wild to me. But that rushing attack at 188 yards a game needs work. And it is now, having said that, consider I think they've only played 7 games. Most everybody else in the league has played 8.
Right.
I think that matters. They've only scored 282 points. They're averaging, 40 points a game, but I also think it matters who they've played. It doesn't matter to me that you drop 56 on Western Michigan. It's far more interesting to me that you gave up 32 to Oregon.
Yeah, well, and I think those 32 points you gave up to Oregon were great throws by Dylan Gabriel. I mean,
They were.
I think that was the big takeaway for me in that game. Was hey, Dylan Gabriel, is a great quarterback. Understands how to place the ball for his receiver. Understands where to go with the football. And I think anytime you play a great defense, you have to have great quarterback play. And that's what I'm looking for out of Will Howard against Penn State. I'm looking for hey, step up into the pocket and deliver, because that's what you're going to have to do going on the road. We know that Ohio State hasn't been able to run the ball, at a really, really high rate, like high enough where you can overcome, a mediocre passing attack, let's say, on any given week.
Yeah.
And that's your problem in this game.
That's going to be a tough game Saturday. And the thing that I would continue to drive home is you lost to the number 1 team in the country. If that is your only loss, what is disappointing about that? And Ohio State fan, I understand. You don't have the vibes that Indiana has right now. You don't. I think it is a very interesting season in these leagues. You look at the top of the Big Ten, you look at the top of the SEC, you look at the top of the Big 12 is a great example. You have Oak State and Utah at the bottom, and you've got BYU at the top of this league. Shocking. You look at the standings in the Big Ten right now, Indiana, Oregon are on top of the league. And you have historic powers like Ohio State, 4th in the league, behind Sandusky State.
But, all of it in front of them.
It is. It is all in front of you. And I think when you look at this game, these are the games that Will Howard is meant to play in. This is why Will Howard went to Penn State. And I think one of the things that's very interesting is Will Howard is not holding back his feelings about the Fighting Sandusky's.
I'm stoked. It's going to be a homecoming for me. I grew up a Penn State fan. I wanted to go there my whole life. They didn't think I was good enough. But I guess we'll see next week if I was.
He's ready. He believes that the Fighting Sandusky's did not think he could play college football. They told him he wasn't good enough. And somehow he found his way to Ohio State. That was not accidental.
Nope.
And it's why I tell everybody, Will Howard was never going to BYU. Will Howard was going to wind up in the Big Ten at a place where he could beat wholesale Sandusky ass.
Yeah.
And that's Ohio State. And he's got arguably the best defense in the league and one of the best defenses in the country behind him.
And he's got one of the best wide receivers in the country.
I think the best
Jeremiah Smith is an absolute stud. And again, it has to be talked about. The concerning thing when you played Oregon was the lack of execution later in that game. Even in the 3rd and 4th quarter, not the last 2 minutes. There are multiple times where down and distance situational stuff where I'm like, man, let your best guy eat. Let your best guy go out and make plays. What's the point of having a quarterback like Will Howard who's got a cannon and not feeding your best wide receiver? And no, I don't care if they're playing man over. He's better than you.
17 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's number 2 in the league in rating, 183.9. Will Howard's having a good year.
Yeah.
Again, I go to the offensive line. That's what I think it is. What do you guys think is Ohio State? The direct question is Ohio State disappointing this year? I don't think they are in any way, shape, or form. Daniel Dixon, hello. Maybe Big needs to play 8 conference game like the SEC does. Well, I think if you look at Ohio State's schedule, they hadn't been tested going to Oregon, which was a big mistake in my opinion. If you're truly elite, play an elite schedule. if you look at Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, Michigan State, Iowa, that was your slate before Oregon. You go to Oregon, you don't execute because it's the first time you've really been in peril. And then you have Nebraska and you struggle against Nebraska. And so now you're going to, that terrible institution that doesn't do anything to protect from sexual assault on Saturday. And are you really prepared for that environment? Well, I would think going to Eugene prepared you for that environment. And that's why I'm going to pick Ohio State to win that game on Friday when we do our picks.
Yeah.
And I think that Ohio State matches up exceptionally well against that Penn State offense. And we'll see how it all plays out. You're not going to have the luxury of, if you're Penn State, you're not going to have the luxury of breaking off big plays to your tight end.
No. And I think that the other thing to consider, too, is that obviously travel is not really a big deal here, right? I mean, this is, by Ohio State standard, this is down the street.
No.
So, I think that the Oregon game, that was a lot of travel, huge environment later in the day. This is, hey, we're going to get there the day before. We'll be fresh. We'll be ready to go. And you're off and running. And I think that, to me, I don't know, like it's easy to pick Ohio State in this game, but the thing that really concerns me is the execution out of the play calling for Ohio State. They tend to, and it's Ryan Day and company, obviously, they tend to get a little conservative. They tend to not just go right at you the entire game. Like, if I'm Ohio State, I've got Quinshon Judkins in the backfield. Obviously Henderson. You've got Jeremiah Smith out wide. Like, you've got dudes. Like, give it to them and let them go beat the hell out of Penn State's defense. Like, that's what this game should be about. This should be about, hey, we understand our offensive line maybe isn't the best in the country, but we need to be committed to running the football early and grinding Penn State out and then letting Jeremiah Smith make big plays. That's what it has to be.